Unless that, no.
I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board, Tuesday, April 4th, 2023. I will begin with a script for remotely conducted and/or hybrid meetings. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in discussion. The town reserved the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. We are using Zoom for this meeting, which allows for the public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link is unique through the meeting. The registration link can be found in the description of the Nantucket Government TV YouTube live feed for the meeting. People registering to be an attendee must use their names. Otherwise, they will not be allowed to participate in discussion. Attendees will join in listening mode. They can click the raise hand button if they wish to speak. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in the order they were raised. All questions should be directed through the chair. Confirming member access as a preliminary matter. This is the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board. Along with the board, the chair, and support staff. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. We have Peter Brace.
Aye.
Dave Franzuto.
Aye.
Dave Bossy.
Aye.
Ron Anderson.
Aye.
Ginger Andrews.
Aye.
For staff, we have Tara Riley. And Sheila Lucy.
Here.
Jeff Carlson.
Hello.
Anticipated speakers on the agenda tonight, please respond in the affirmative. If there's anybody, I see Mr. Peter Morrison.
Here.
Thank you very much. I see Kona is with us as well. Kona Hosier. If you wish to speak, raise your hand. Introduction to the remote meeting. Good evening. This open meeting of the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, Andrew Lowell, the chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Do we have approval of tonight's agenda? Motion, please.
Motion approved. Scott Anderson. Second.
Motion's made by Scott Anderson, seconded by Mr. Franzuto to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor, Mr. Franzuto? Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Brace?
Aye.
Mr. Bossy?
Aye.
Andrews? Ginger, you with us?
I was waiting for my
Right.
waiting for my name to be called. Sorry. I'm here. Yes, I approve.
Thank you, and the chair votes aye as well. Approval of draft minutes of March 21st, 2023. Has everybody had a chance to review them? Are there any revisions? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion's made by Mr. Anderson, seconded by Mr. Franzuto to approve the minutes of March 21st. All in favor, Mr. Franzuto,
Aye.
Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Mr. Brace,
Aye.
Mr. Bossy,
Aye.
Mr. Andrews.
I'll abstain since I wasn't there.
Thank you. The chair votes aye as well. Nothing under chairman's report, Marine Department report, please, Sheila.
Okay, so a few things, the town pier's construction is, going really well. They're on track to be completed for May 15th. For phase one, they started the electrical underneath the dock today. They're redecking the whole thing, the, 100-foot extension has been complete. And, wave barriers up and done and reinforced and looks really good. It's gonna make a huge difference. We can already tell with the winds that we've had so far. It's gonna be amazing. We gained 5 slips out of it, and things are really good. They pulled the pipes for the dinghy docks, and those are gonna be now attached to pilings. We have, you got a new ramp for the dinghy docks, and all's good that way. We have the concrete floats have been purchased, and the pilings for the concrete floats have been purchased. So at town meeting, we're asking for some money for the installation. I think that's Article 12, so if you guys support that, that would be amazing. But at least we have the materials that they were made by Marine Tech. And they're what we've been waiting for a really long time. We're hoping that we can start the installation of those pilings or the installation of the floating docks sometime around October, November. The boat basement project's also looking good. It's just a lot of traffic over there because they're working on Swains, which is closest to the town pier, and then our stuff on the town pier. The only thing with the extension on the wave barrier is moorings are gonna be misplaced, but we're working that out. And to see what we can do about that. We're working. This year, we have to make a channel going into Great Harbor Yacht Club because, the mooring handlers have been getting a little bit crazy in there, and it's just making it nearly impossible. If we have an emergency, we have to do emergency haul out to the tow boat down through there, so I'm working to reestablish that channel. Dave had that channel really good, but, you know, the mooring handlers have been getting crazier, and the demographics of boats are getting bigger, so they take up a little bit more space, but that's gonna be my big focus for this year, is to make sure that we get a auxiliary channel leading into the Great Harbor Yacht Club, not for the Great Harbor Yacht Club people, but for the people that need emergency haul up with the travel lift. We're working on, I've been working with the new fire chief. We've been going to like the boat base in the town pier, Matticat Marine, all of the waterfront infrastructure to make sure that we have good fire plans and different ideas of what we can do in case we were to have a fire, because obviously, besides the steamship authority, our entire waterfront infrastructure is wooden, so when it goes, it's gonna go, so we just wanna make sure that we're ready. And he's really into it, and they're checking out and making sure that all the stuff at the boat basin works, which hasn't been done for quite a while, so I think that's gonna be a good thing. We've taken them over to Tucking-Up a whole bunch of times to make sure that their equipment over there is good and everybody's comfortable getting in and out of there. What docks we can use, whether it's North Shore, South Shore, or in the lagoon, how we're gonna do it and how we're gonna make approaches, so we continue to work on that. The dinghy dock. So the dinghy docks became really problematic last year when we made people put permits on their dinghies that are on the beach because of what was going on over at Monomoy. So everybody just said, well, I'm not doing that, so now they just put them on the dinghy dock. Other thing that's happening is people next door at Grand Point Marine, they were selling 12.8-foot inflatable boats that the rich people were buying up like candy and then using the dinghy dock like a sled because it's under 13 feet. So, last year I counted up at the end of the day, there was 21 of those inflatables tied up there. None of them have moorings. So they're not using them to get to and from a mooring, they were using them like a sled. So I gotta come up with some type of a solution to make that possible, because what happened is everybody coming in from the moorings had no place to go, and they were getting 6, 8 deep. You know, they were climbing over 6 boats to get onto the dock. So I got a couple ideas. We ended up giving up one of our transient slips, the first transient slip that runs right by the thing there. We just had them tie off the pines, and I put a bunch of ladders down, which did relieve a little bit of it, but I talked to the owners of the company next door and just said, that's not what that's for. It's not for slips. So working on that, but that was the biggest thing that we had people screaming at us about last year, and we get screamed at every day about it. So right now we're in the process of hiring seasonal staff. We, unlike every other town on the Cape, we've had no problems. We had over 150 applicants to be lifeguards out here. Housing, of course, what we were struggling with, but we've worked that out. We've come up with enough housing to get everybody through. Also, our junior lifeguard program is really paying off because the kids, we start them at 12 and then they grow into the program when they're about 16, and then we keep them for a while. So we're getting more and more local kids, which is a really good thing. I'm also trying to get one more full-time staff. That's, we're in the process of that. Get another assistant. And the other thing that Andy asked me to talk about was our office building. So our office building, we asked for like $1.2 million over the highest bid last time. We had one guy bid on it. It came in at $4.9 million more than what we have money for. So we are back to the drawing board with that. So we look like we're 3 to 5 years out after they do the design and all that stuff on it. But one guy bid it, he came in at 8.9. The highest bid a while ago was 4 million. And so we asked and got up to 5.1 million and thought how much it could not go up that much, but it did. And the guy came in at 8.9. So basically, we're starting from scratch. The maintenance building out an industry road is there. It's coming slow though, but we've had a little bit of work in it, and what's been good is at least we're still outside, but at least we're not out in the snow and the rain. At least we got some wall and a roof over our head, and hopefully by next winter we'll have heat so that we can do all of the construction in reasonable temperatures. And Ernie Straight's working on that, and we're giving money to it as we can. And that's
Sheila, the 12-foot 8-inch inflatables, are they motorized?
yeah.
And I'm sure you've thought of every angle you can go at. I'm just curious if dinghies can be connected to a mooring, so to speak,
Well, that's
on paper.
pretty much what I think
So,
we're gonna have to end up doing is do what we did with the ones on the beach. So this year, I went with a whole different style of dinghy permit. I did it like they do the beach sticker, where you can write the number in, so I write the mooring in on it. And it's a different shape than the mooring sticker, because when I wasn't allowed to choose them last year, they gave me ones that looked just like mooring stickers, and so we have that going for us. But this year I requested to get a square and be able to write the mooring number in, and we're doing that for the ones that are on the beach. I just think we need to extend the regulation to go onto the dinghy dock as well. And I think that'll work, but the one thing that's gonna be tricky is the guys coming in from the Anchorage and the Nantucket moorings. Because they're transient and whatever, but, I figure if we can brainstorm something and come up with something.
Is there a way a fee can be attached to these?
There is a fee,
Okay,
there's a fee now for the ones on the beach,
okay,
it's $25.
all right. Thinking if you're somehow supplying space to these inflatables that are not connected to somebody that has a mooring, maybe some type of a fee structure could be created. for
Yeah.
those.
Yeah, well, we just gotta get them out of there, because the people on the moorings and in the anchors have to be there, and that's what I said to next door, and I was like, well, we just gotta figure out what we're gonna do, and like, we're bouncing some ideas around, and before I make a final decision, I'll make sure that it's cool.
I'm sure you will, and it's too bad you have to deal with that.
Yeah,
Just
it's
another-
it's just one thing I
wrench
just
in the
didn't
motor
expect,
for you,
because Dave can tell you before, we just used to have 13-foot whalers, but they've got moved all the time, and they were usually going to a mooring, and it wasn't an incident, but all of a sudden,
Mhm.
it was crazy, and the liveaboards were like losing their minds on it, on the regular.
And will you have some input into the harbor action plan?
Yeah, I didn't get any emails about it until after it happened, and then after it happened, somebody called me and said, we forgot to put you on it, and now I'm included, so I definitely will participate in that.
Okay, and the sediment transport study and
Yeah,
veg
Vince
plan?
already called me and asked me to be part of that, so, yeah, I'm willing to help with anything. I think I got overlooked by accident last time, so. I just heard everybody say, that was a really great meeting. I was like, what?
Well, it's for, like you just mentioned, opening up the channel to Great Harbor. And certainly there must be some other areas of concern.
Oh, yeah,
that-
but I'll be on the next one.
We here felt that your voice needs to be heard in this, for
Thank you.
sure. Is there a like derelict boat upside down? in the
Yep,
North Shore?
that's an old Joey Dooley boat. It came from them as China. And it's now in the watershed, and it's like completely mudded in. The Coast Guard has pulled on it, I have pulled on it, we pulled on it together. So we're gonna have to get, Chris Fuller or Phil, one of our divers, to go down and see what they see and what they can do and how we can get it out of there, but I have full intentions on getting it out. But it's not moving. I
Yeah.
mean, we put the 47 on it and gave it everything it had.
Oh, interesting.
I was hoping we were gonna break it in half, kind of secretly, but.
Oh, and how is your maneuverability there? Scholopers have told me they can barely get into Moorshed now, and it looks like there are some dry shoals appearing.
Well, that's the problem, is
Yeah.
like it's shoaled up everywhere. Because if you think about that thing has been exposed for a long time, a long time. But, yeah,
Thank you, Peter. Mr. Franzuto?
Yeah, sure. For those that don't know, could you just give an overview about what is contained in that new office building? And because the reason I say that is when you say office building, it sounds self-serving. And it's not self-serving because it's explained to them that it's an entire new bathroom facility that's provided for all of the boats in the mooring. So when you say office building, you don't get the picture. So could you just tell them what's in that building?
Yeah, it's just a gigantic bathroom with two small offices upstairs. And that, no storage, no anything. It's literally like, we can't fit, like our summer crew can't fit in there. It's just a huge bathroom. It's like, it's a center for, it's got showers and restrooms and changing rooms and stuff like that for everybody in the Anchorage and everybody in the mooring field. But that said, it does have the main office where people can go and pick up their permits. It's got a little office two little offices upstairs over the bathrooms. And then, but there's big push by certain ex-selectmen that think it should be across the street. Because they want to open it up so that, that street's a scenic highway. But that street is not a scenic highway, that's the thoroughfare to get to the ferry, so every, propane truck and every gas truck and all the trucks carrying hazardous materials drive down that road. Not so sure that we want them gazing at the harbor when they're driving those things, number one. Number two, the amount of traffic that would be crossing that street to use the restrooms and to do business with the harbor master's office, whatever. That thing, it's a parking lot in the summer as it is. Washington Street would just become gridlock. It would just become a closed area. So the two things we need is we need the new building for the boaters because it's their first impression of Nantucket when they come in, the cruise ships and everybody in the Anchorage and everybody in Moorefield. And second, we need it on that side of the street because we also need to have quick access. If somebody has a medical emergency, some type of a boating emergency or whatever, we need to be on the same side of the street so that we can go help them out. That was the big hurdle that we had to go through last year, was because everybody wanted to tear it down and put it in the parking lot. So then not only are you gonna do that, you're gonna move parking spaces for the people at the town pier, which there aren't enough of anyways. So, yeah, you're right, Dave. When you say office building, it does sound like
That's
something fancy.
Yeah, I mean, when you say, the harbor master is getting a new office, that's not really true. Those bathrooms were cobbled together when in 1990, those bathrooms were cold outside showers. Because sailboat people bring $5 and a clean t-shirt and they never change either one. But the issue is that, they were expanded under a federal grant to support the Clean Vessel Act for the pump house, because you want them to use the bathroom, right? And within the limits of the property that we owned at the time, we expanded them as much as we could. We had not bought the Loring property next door. So we only owned like 83 or 53 feet on the water, the town did. So, and the fact of keeping rescue equipment and rescue boats and equipment across the street, it would be like telling the fire department, you're gonna have to park your trucks on the other side of Fairgrounds Road, and you're gonna have to run across there to go get them. I mean, that's silly, but anyway. The thing about the dinghies, they've obviously found a loophole, number one. Number two, you can put whatever permit fee on that you would like. You could put $1,000 permit fee on that, and they would be more than happy to pay it, because A, they don't have a slip, B, they don't have a mooring. And this is their recreational boat. This is what they're using to go fishing. This is what they're taking the kids tubing on. This is what they're using. So a permit fee also has to be commensurate with the services provided. You can't charge some ridiculous number. But I'm telling you, you could charge those people $1,000 and they'd be perfectly happy to pay it, because they need a place to put their boat. So, and the 13-foot and under was done specifically for the people who lived aboard who used their dinghies to go back and forth to their boats that they lived on. Granted, we don't have as many as we used to, but we still do. But it's also for, it's the only dinghy dock in the entire town. There has been some discussion, and I probably need to bring it back up. There is some discussion about doing there was some discussion about doing something over by,
Petrol Landing.
the end, well, Petrol Landing, and also the end of Easy Street by the steamship. There's a small piece of property that we own there, and putting a dinghy dock there. But that's fine, you get the dinghies there, but then how do they get to the town pier to go to the bathroom and buy ice? Or get information, or get the pump out information, or get the brochures for the federal no discharge, you know, how do you, it's in the wrong place, so what do? You have a kiosk over there? I don't know, but my point is it's there for a reason, it's there that supports so many other functions within the harbor, that's why the dinghy docks are there. And Petrol Landing, that was one of my, questions a few weeks ago, when I was going through the harbor plan. Do you have any idea where the land bank stands on?
Yeah, they're still held up in court, all the neighbors.
See, that's, okay, thank you, that's just foolish, but anyway, for those of you that after offline ask me about Petrol Landing, I'll tell you what the design looks like and why it would eliminate. Not eliminate, it would greatly reduce issue that she has, and Petrol Landing is certainly within walking distance of the bathrooms and all the facilities. So that's why, again, it was so important. But anyway, thank you.
Mr. Brace.
Last I heard from Jesse Bell at the land bank was they'd settled all the appeals, but then someone else came in and appealed that, and they're waiting for that. And she said, I asked her, do you think you guys are gonna prevail? And she said, yeah, but it takes
Years
time.
away, she said.
Yeah, so, forgive my ignorance, Sheila, I just don't understand what you're talking about. There is a problem and how it's a loophole, I'm just,
Okay, so there's a regulation that says that if you have a vessel that's used as a dinghy, that's 13 feet or less, you can tie up at the dinghy dock for free. And so a bunch of people bought a whole bunch of little 12-foot, 8-inch
yeah,
boats that don't have moorings, they're not using it as a dinghy there, but
Just-
I legally can't throw them off because they're less than 13 feet.
so they're just using,
Yeah, and by even the company's own admission, it's rich people that say that they got a boat on Nantucket, and literally they said they drove them over last May, tied them off, and they didn't move until October when he hauled them out of the water.
okay, and then you kept mentioning on the beach. You talking the beach in front of your office, are you talking like over Cathcart?
No,
or
when you guys
Monomoy?
did this thing, or the selectmen made us, on Monomoy, because those rich people over there don't want boats out in front of their house.
Land bank.
So we had to put a sticker on there to say that that boat's on Mr. Gershner's rack because they have a mooring there.
The land bank.
Well, no, the land bank did not comply. The town of Nantucket's the only one that complied. And so they can go over on the land bank ones at Cathcart, but they can't go on the town ones
Okay,
unless they have a permit. So everybody just went to Cathcart or they went to the town pier.
so,
Nobody wants to pay the money.
so you make people who are having their dinghy over there at Cathcart get a permit?
Nope, not at Cathcart, in Boston, right off where Mr. Gershner lives.
Okay,
So those dinghy racks are ours, those they have to have a permit. We go over every single day, because Mr. Gershner cries every single day, so we go over every single day, and if the boat doesn't have a permit on it, we go and take it and bring it away until the person calls us, it's a full-time job. Then the person calls us up and said, did you take my dinghy or my kayak? And we say, yes, and they say, well, I want it delivered back to my house. So we have a kid in the truck all day long, picking it up from there and driving it out to a storage area and then driving it back to people's house.
and then the other question that I had was, When you said an emergency channel for Great Harbor Yacht Club, are you talking about dredging a channel or just
No,
just marking it?
Yep, making
Okay.
sure that the moorings stay out of there.
I
And
see.
like I said, I let the moorings get out of control. It's my fault. And I just didn't pay as close of attention, and I always thought we could just push stuff out of the way, but the Coast Guard complained, and I went for a ride with them. I was like, yeah, you're right.
And to that point, if I may, the Great Harbor Yacht Club in their chapter 91 permit is required to provide haul out services for boats up to 47 feet. And it was written that way so the Coast Guard could haul out there.
Yeah.
So if you got a 47 with a problem and it needs to come out of the water, it needs to be able to get to that haul out slip so they can put it on that travel lift. And that travel lift is sized big enough to haul that boat. And it's probably one of the heaviest things they would ever haul, but the permit states that they have to have that capability as part of the license that the town issued them. So it's very important. But if I'm gonna run a 22-foot sailboat up in there because I got a hole in it or my mast is broken, that's one thing. But a 47, a little bit harder to get in there. So anyway, that's. But to further explain what she's trying to say, when she says that's why it has to be maintained as a channel, they gotta be able to get in
And they have to be able to tow somebody
in there.
alongside,
Good
tow in there, so
Good
it needs to be wide enough.
Okay,
Sheila, well, any other board members' questions for Sheila? She does have another meeting to go to after this. I failed to mention earlier. Mr. Bossy, or Ginger, Mr. Anderson. Questions? or
Just
comments?
Dave Bossy, just a quick point about the dinghies. We used to cruise here through the Sound. Places like Port Jeff had a sign out there at the dinghy dock, $5 permit. And what that did was, and if you read the fine print, it had to be tied back to a vessel or a mooring. Maybe that's a way for you to go, Sheila, is to put a sign up there, require a permit, and then that permit has to be required, either to a vessel on the anchorage or a mooring.
Thank you.
Just a thought, way to go.
Thank you, Mr. Bossy. Board members? Mr. Anderson?
Just one other comment about when you're having the kids, or have to be the butler or servant to bring stuff back. What, if your car is towed, you gotta pay the towing and a fine. Why can't you come up with something like that to
Yeah, we
at
need to
least
put it-
cover the,
But we need to put that in the regulations, and it's not in there right now, so I can't do it right now.
okay.
Because other than that, otherwise I'm technically stealing their stuff if I don't bring it back.
Well, and literally, that's the phone call that's made. And I've done it 1,000 times. Someone has stolen my kayak.
Mhm.
It's just like somebody with a bogus mooring permit or no mooring permit. We used to tow the boat. I swear to God, within 30 minutes, the phone was going to ring and they're gonna say, somebody has stolen my boat. You say, nope, nobody stole it. I got it. You come and get it back from me. But offline, I'll tell you the whole Gerster story. It's a double-edged sword. We got public access for the town and we, through the attorneys, came up with this agreement and it's an okay agreement. But it was an okay agreement when we have 2,300 boats here. It's not an okay agreement when we have 3,500 boats. Anyway.
so I got another question,
Quickly.
if you crack down on them at the dinghy dock.
Yeah.
And they're like, screw this, it's too much of a hassle. Does that mean that pushes them all over the other side of the harbor and,
Yeah, then all they'll do
Yeah.
to set Mr. Gershon free again is they'll take cinder blocks.
Yeah.
And they'll tie it off, they'll throw a cinder block onto the beach where they can walk off and walk up the ramp at Monomoy there. And they'll tie the thing off there.
There'll be a children.
Exactly, there'll be a children's beach, there'll be, you name it, they'll be there, so.
but is there, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but is there a way for you to the story of the person leaving the kayak and then if it's in a full-time job, can't you hold a kayak hostage and say, yeah, you can have it back for this fine so that they're deterred?
not until we put it in the regulations.
Okay,
You can't do anything until it's in the regs. So right now, my hands are tied by the way the reg was written. And so that's what we end up doing. But I mean, we don't. I try not to make it easy for them to get it back, like I drag my feet doing it. But it's also just as difficult to listen to the phone blow up.
well, come back to us for a recommendation, we'll definitely help you out with a letter for that.
Okay.
We'll brainstorm.
Does that have to be done at a certain time of year or can it?
No.
It just has to be
Yeah, we can do that.
advertised, go
Yeah.
through the advertising
Exactly.
stage. Back to the office building quickly, just to complete, I'll get to you, Ginger, thank you. The appropriation for the new office building was first approved at town meeting, what year, do you recall?
No idea.
All right,
I'm gonna
and
5 years
Well,
ago.
2017, we went to the Seaport Council and got $1 million. With the contingency that the town appropriated a like amount to match it. So that was 2018. So it's going on 5 years now. And at that time, the cost was estimated to be around 2.5 million. Now it's 8,
8.9.
there we go. So that's what you
And-
get when you delay 5 years.
wasn't the first appropriation 3.5, I recall? For some reason, so,
I think it was $1 million too, but
Yeah.
all right,
I can look at change a lot.
yeah. Ginger, do you have a question?
Oh, well, I was just wondering if the dinghy issue could be like treated like a parking issue where you get a boot of some sort, or you know, there's a big orange parking ticket and it's locked up so they can't get to it. I mean, if it just sits there and they never use it, I mean, that might not help, but that was one thought I had. And if the regulations need to be changed, how could we help with that?
Well, I'll come back to you guys and get some input on a regulation change.
Great.
Thank you, Ginger. Board members, any more questions on Marine Department report? Any questions from the public for the Marine Department? Not seeing or hearing any. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for
See ya.
coming.
You're more than welcome. See you soon.
All right, good night.
Can I get a new sweatshirt?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thanks.
Natural resources.
Sure. I'll jump in with some hatchery stuff, and then Jeff, if you have anything to add, feel free.
Thank you.
Slide over to the table, Bill.
We're talking to this, all right?
Awkward.
All right, so last week I went to Baltimore for the National Shellfish Association meeting. It was amazing. It was 5 days of nerding out to shellfish stuff and research and industry updates. It was great. Gave the presentation, included Shab in it, and I think it was well received. So yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so while I was gone, the ponds were opened and partially closed. I think Hummock is
How much still open?
okay, open a bit. So we're looking at that. Prior to leaving for Baltimore, we went out and sampled the ponds, which is something that we do for water quality. And then 10 days after they close, we'll sample them again to see how much flushing, like how it affected the water quality and that sort of thing. Other news, we just hired 2 new full-time people. Griffin Harkins is going to be our new assistant biologist. He's been with us for 3 years as an intern. Has a master's degree in aquaculture and a lot of experience growing seaweed and doing all kinds of different types of projects. He's participated in all of our spat bag research and also all of the yearly surveys that we do, the benthic surveys of the harbor. So he's very familiar with everything related to NRD and to Nantucket and Mattucket. And then Emma Morgan is going to be our water quality specialist, and we're still in the process of working out paperwork to see when she's going to start, but probably the end of May is probably more realistic for her. So we're really excited. I'm excited to have some help down there. So that's good. Also this week, we are doing intern interviews for the season, and we have 2 returning interns that will be coming back, Morgan Nelson and Sky Flegg. They were with us for the past, Sky was with us last year, and Morgan was with us for 2 years. So they'll be doing that. So we're interviewing for a water quality intern. And we have a lot of good candidates, so I feel pretty good about finding some this week. Towards the end of April, we're going to be resuming our shell recycling pickups from the restaurants and taking those out to the DPW. When I was at the conference, kind of the overall theme for oyster restoration is that shell is extremely limited. And a lot of the talks were on alternative substrates that you can use for oyster reefs and stuff like that. So it is kind of an important thing for us to keep going. Also, living on an island, shipping limestone here and all kinds of stuff for alternative substrates is just cost prohibitive. So it makes sense that we would continue that when we have the resource here. In the hatchery, we have 4 groups of oysters right now that are conditioning, ready to spawn in 5 weeks, and then scallops are coming in next week, and those will be ready in 3 weeks. Our bioreactor has been running for 5 weeks straight now, very little maintenance. We hit 12 million cells per mil, which is amazing. And for those of you that don't know, like usual, like we're lucky for getting like in between 2 to 3 million cells per mil in all our individual cultures. So having this machine that is cranking out that much on a regular basis is amazing. Yeah, and I think that's all I have for right now. Just trying to get back into everything after being gone for a week. So scalp season obviously closed, and we recorded around 7,200, still waiting on some reports. I think everything is probably going to end up somewhere maybe around 7,500 bushels. I think that's a good thing. I think there's still scallops left in the water. So I think overall it was a good year. We're pleased with it. We're trying to link, record the final bushel count so that we can link it to hatchery efforts and restoration and recruitment and stuff and track that.
I know Bruce Cowan was in by noon on the last day with his 5-box limit. They look very good, so. May I ask, the new assistant biologist, you mentioned, experience in seaweed, specifically eelgrass?
He does have experience in seagrasses, but when I was talking about his aquaculture experience, he has experience in sugar kelp. He's from Maine. And so they do a lot of sugar kelp, and they're getting into bay scallops, and they do a lot of sea scallop work up there. So he's been involved in a lot of different types of projects and things throughout his academic career and in the summers. So thrilled to have him.
He's big into aquaponics.
Yes.
Sounds tremendous.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
By the smile on your face, I guess you are. Shall we move on to Mr. Carlson and then we'll go to questions, or would you like?
A couple of questions.
Go ahead. All right, questions for Tara.
He said 6,100 bushels, but that's what you had at the moment, right?
No, I talked to the Inky today, and they said that they had $7,200 on their record, or 7,200 bushels on the record.
The current that had 61, I think.
Yeah.
But given that what Andy just said about Bruce Cowan coming in at noon with 5 boxes. Yeah, I always wondered, like, the bushel count at the end of the year is the bushel count at the end of the year, but what's still left in the water? And you said you're gonna do after season surveys. I think it's gonna be really useful, because then you'll be able to, you might actually be able to come up with a number, what's left in the water, and could let you know that, it isn't, our fishery isn't done. There's a lot of scallops there that didn't get caught. So you could say potentially there are hundreds or thousands of more bushels left in the water. They may not make it till next year, but just so that. I guess I'm thinking like, just trying to be positive, and saying, okay, these fishermen, there are less fishermen out there. We had the problem in the wintertime where fishermen weren't able to sell.
Mhm.
The price was low, so not all the scallops got caught, but if they were caught, our numbers might have been at 10 or something like that. And Dave used to say that a sustainable fishery was 15,000 bushels. So, I don't know, I'm just reaching, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I personally, I mean, obviously I want to see like the resource be sustainable and have a consistent yield every year, but I'm more worried about the actual scallop fleet, and
Yeah.
the participation in it moving forward, and to see if, the town wants a revitalization of the culture and the history of that, and if the resource can rebound and be there, will that come into play? Like, if you build it, will they come? If you have scallops, will they come? I don't know. So many things have changed.
Right, you hope to carry on what Peter said. If somebody's on the cusp or the edge of deciding whether they're gonna rig up and go, and you say, you know what, they landed 7,000 bushel and they estimate there'd be another 2,000 bushel out there. That may sway somebody to go, and that would help. That positivity would reinforce and maybe the fishery does grow back. I mean, I was looking at some stuff, like I said, I went through some boxes today, and I was looking at some stuff from that Roger Vandenberg did some metrics, and I think you and I worked on that, and the 15,000 bushel thing, the 4 years that we had around 15,000 bushel consecutively, that was based on 50 or 60 fishermen.
Yeah.
So, maybe the metric changes now. Maybe if the consistent number is 10, then you can support 40 fishermen. You know what I'm saying? But that's the positivity of it, I
Well, I'm
think.
just saying it'd be good for everybody to know
Yeah,
that they're in the water, they're there. What we're doing is the right thing.
right.
They're just not being caught.
Well, Mr. Brace, before getting too excited about what I mentioned about Mr. Cowan,
Yeah,
he also mentioned that a lot of areas that he worked through the season
Yeah.
were really worked over,
Yeah.
and he happened to, where so few people were out at the end of the season, he just simply happened to find a couple of sweet spots.
no, I know what you're saying. I know that.
Mr. Chairman,
Just a second, Ginger, hold on to that thought. I'm wondering, Peter, are you thinking, can we somehow be more prepared to either extend the season or somehow have more flexibility and maybe near the end of the season, knowing there are more out there, open up Saturdays or raise the limit?
All of that and more, and see if we can extend the season. If scalpers don't want to go, then, say, for all you recreational people, and I can think of a couple of people that are always posting on Facebook that they just went again. It's extended for another 2 weeks or whatever. Not that they're gonna go out into the deep water, but some people will dive. I'm just saying it's a resource that gets wasted if no one catches them.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking the scalloper may appreciate, and maybe we could poll the scallopers, what would they prefer? Either extending the season or raising the limit. Raising the limit would allow them to catch more in less time. And as far as to address a little bit about the aging out of the fleet, and I'd like to think that if economics were better and there was not a drop from $20 a pound to $13 a pound, that it would be more attractive to younger guys to be interested in going out.
And I'm hoping we'll see what happens if a co-op can help this or not, if a co-op gets off the ground. The Shellfish Association, which Mr. Morrison can attest for, is working diligently to try to get the proper value from the Nantucket baseball, which I think will help tremendously with getting younger guys out there.
Can I make a comment to this discussion? And it's something that Tara and I talk a lot about is, I think we're kind of entering a new phase in baseball fishery management that we've kind of talked about. I know even Dave and I have talked about it. I know Dave, Tara and I have talked about it, where we're starting to collect a lot of really good information. We're starting to do, yearly surveys, and we'd like to do them in spring and fall. We have a fleet that is down in numbers from what it's historically been, from the days where we had 300 licenses. We're now slightly under 100. We're probably starting to have the need to have real discussions, probably here and with the fishermen and with NSA, to talk about what active fishery management looks like, and to take away the discussions about extensions and how they work. Use the data that we're collecting and make proactive steps to say, well, maybe we don't want to extend into April because we're worried about what's happening with eelgrass, and eelgrass may be breaking dormancy and not wanting to disturb the eelgrass. Maybe if our surveys are showing, maybe commercial season instead starts partway into October, and it starts earlier, because then the state allows base scallops to go essentially from October 1st to March 30th.
Right.
The problem historically with April extensions is you require a state extension as well, which can be kind of hit or miss to get. But I think starting to look at it and say, well, maybe from our surveys, the bushel limit should be 6, because we're seeing so many out there and we have that information. And then you can evaluate as you go, or hey, this area is full of seed scallops and the eelgrass is really great. Maybe this area should be restricted to divers only because of the nursery habitat that's potentially there. But I think we have to start having those discussions and not just, well, this is how we've always done it, and this is what we should do.
And one of the things too is that the only reason we never, Nantucket historically never opened on October 1st, like the vineyard does. Vineyard sometimes will open October 15th. But base scallops is from the 1st of October to the 31st of March. The only reason we never did that is because we had such a high we had 1,800 or 1,900 recreational permits. Okay, so we let the recreational people go, get the scallops. We hit the market the 1st of November. And one of the things we had talked about years ago was increase in, and with the new data, you can certainly make a case for a lot of these things. But you don't want to flood the market because vineyard's already been on the market for 2 weeks. So maybe the 1st of December or the 1st of January, you go to 6 bushels. And you let Nantucket saturate, let Nantucket have an opportunity to saturate, and you hope the price holds. But we always, that's how many recreational permits they sell?
Oh, they sell a couple thousand of those still.
Yeah, so you still have the recreational people, so that's why it was always a delayed entry for the commercial thing. But that could be looked at now with the metrics of what's being landed when and what's still out there, and we've never hesitated. And we've taken the heat for it many times of closing areas because of high amounts of seed or whatever. So I think Jeff's right. I think it's going to be a fluid, dynamic management instead of just saying, all right, it's a rodeo, go catch them.
I mean, I would love to start to have if Tara wants to throw her book at me after I say this, that's fine, but I would love to have a conversation at the end of summer and early fall where we all sit down and we look at the data that we've had and look at the past couple of years and recommend to the select board to set a limit at a certain amount for the year and not just start at a certain way, but to actually try to create limits that we believe the fishery can bear and not do environmental damage. I mean, I think there's a lot of room to even look at, you know, harvest methods and new dredges. I know some of the fishermen have been trying, you know, new dredges even in the last couple of years that may or may not have more or less harm to the bottom, but looking at all of those things to try to make incremental gains to hopefully not only increase bushel counts, but improve environmental health and also encourage people to join the fishery. I think all of those things go hand in hand. And I think if people see that there's care and attention being paid to something and those discussions are being had, then more people will be interested too. And I think that does nothing but encourage that, and it spreads awareness and lots of great things that are there, because right now you're fighting with the guys that want to go because they want to go, but to get new people in, it's hard to can always convince them to go when they can go swing a hammer for $40 an hour. That it's tough to compete with without a real sense of belonging and community that goes with it.
Mr. Chairman, Peter Morrison, could I just make a quick addition to what Jeff was saying?
I put Ginger off first, Peter. Hang on a second. Miss Andrews?
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about the quality of the product. And a friend of mine gave me some of Mr. Cowan's scallops a few days ago, and they were really good. They were properly opened. They were really clean. There wasn't little bits of gut sticking to them, or little hunks of fine sand. I mean, they were really excellent. And I still maintain that the quality of the product is really dependent on the skills of the opener. And some people just want to get through them and don't really care. I mean, he was opening his own scallops. So I've also heard complaints about one particular market, which shall remain nameless, with excessive sand in the scallops. And, I just have concerns about the way openers may not be doing the job the way it should be done sometimes. So I don't know how those standards could be maintained, but I think that could be a factor in the price ultimately too.
Yeah, and Ginger, you mentioned that, and actually, some of the shanties will go as far as straining their scallops and washing the sand out. They bring in 5-gallon buckets of salt water from the harbor with them. They're using colanders and shaking the sand out, and some of the fishermen are very concerned about how some of the other catch is being brought in, because some people are under the impression that it's up to the chefs in the restaurants to clean the sand from the scallops, which is very unfortunate to think that way. So good point. And I want to mention to Jeff also that I love the proactive and keeping data. Old timers used to say there's a banner year every 7 years. Is there any way you can look back at data and possibly be able to take a 5, 6, 7 year period and see seasons repeating themselves to actually help project what the next season may be like? And I also would agree 100% with starting the commercial season earlier. I think there's plenty of shallow area that fishermen and boats can't get to that can accommodate the recreational people. But let's face it, the market for the scallop is more in demand during the holidays than any other time. So to be able to have more at hand Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then it seems like demand kind of wanes off after that. But just thinking of the old timers and their cyclical comments of the banner year being every 7 years. I don't know if that's still the case or not. Hard to tell when there's not as large of a fleet out there. Maybe, I'm not sure, but
It's always one of the tricky parts with bushel counts is accounting for effort for what was there. You only have 10 boats fishing a day. You're only going to be bringing in their single license boats, 50 a day.
Hmm.
You got 200 boats, it's a different story, so it can be misleading, but I totally hear what you're saying and agree, but I know we have historic numbers too, so I'm sure we can.
And Mr. Morrison, public comments after the report. I don't think the report is complete yet, but if this is specific to what we've just been talking about currently,
It's specific,
Please.
it's specific just to what Jeff was saying, and I'll be very brief. I think, you could get started on Jeff's idea by just trying to get a simple exit interview from scallopers, just ask them two simple questions, why did you stop scalloping when you did? Why, sort of like, why didn't you stay for another week? And let them just answer it. It could be, you probably capture some information like, there just weren't any more scallops left, or it wasn't that there weren't enough scallops, but something else happened, the price was too low. And just, see if you can get, some reasonable response. Half of the people out on the water, they answer that question in a qualitative way, you'd get some insights, and then you could start focusing in on whether, what the factors might be, market conditions, peak demand, or, there's still scallops out there, but, it's not hopeless, but just not profitable.
Sounds like Mr. Vanderberg.
Yeah.
thank you, Peter. Do you have a report to continue with?
I do. I have a couple other things really quickly. I'll stay away from the stuff under old business really quickly. We're getting ready. We've been scoping for a while. A study looking at groundwater flow into Nantucket Harbor and redefining the Nantucket Harbor watershed as part of that. So doing some groundwater contour mapping and then some nutrient flow assessment in that. We had a little bit of a slowdown. We had some interested folks, and that's obviously a study that is kind of cross departments with water and sewer and health in our office.
Quickly to clarify, groundwater including surface water and stormwater runoff.
So, yeah, so what specifically is this is looking at is, I probably didn't say it very well, is we're gonna remap the watershed. So the watershed includes the surface water flow plus groundwater flow, defines what contributes to Nantucket Harbor. And then specifically, since we already monitor a number of surface water flows and the harbor itself, this study will also be looking at the nutrient flows specifically within groundwater. So we can try to track where we may be getting different plumes of nutrients that get in, whether it's nitrogen or phosphorus, and where we may be able to source it a little bit and figure it out. But then that will also help the health department and the water company with how they manage their wells and things like septics within that zone for the harbor watershed. The last time we looked at the Nantucket Harbor watershed, it didn't really get formally redone, but it was done through the original estuary plan for Nantucket Harbor. The last time the groundwater contours got done was 1992. So it's due for an update because things have definitely changed in there. That's what we have kind of seen and what the water company has kind of indicated. But the stormwater measurements, one of the capital funding requests that our department put in is essentially a data collection plan to the town for, this is what we need to collect for baseline data. It includes the bay scallop and the eelgrass, the benthic study that Tara has talked to you guys about. It includes stormwater data collection for what's coming out of stormwater. There's some kind of continuous groundwater monitoring that's included in it. But we've put that in as a recurring yearly capital expense. It's just if you want us to stay in the game, this is what it costs every year. So our numbers are current and we can meet the requirements that we need for permitting, for project design. And we're not delaying project design or management options with well, we got to collect data up front. This is the attempt to finally say, we got all the data. Now we need to take action, and we'll continue to take data through it and then continue to evaluate so we can kind of stay in a rolling loop going forward and not trying to address it. So that's kind of two separate things, and that will be up at town meeting. That's one of our capital funding items. Not that the capital article ever gets called, but, it's in there if it does. Kind of with that too, our other piece of exciting news. I know Tara mentioned that we have a new water quality person and assistant biologist. But for those who haven't been tracking, our whole department has gone through a little bit of a reorganization for efficiency purposes, and we've kind of moved ourselves into 3 divisions within the department. One of them is kind of our sustainability and resiliency group that Vince Murphy is the head of. Our others are more regulatory arm where our new conservation agent, Will DeLerba, runs. If you haven't had a chance to meet Will, he's one of the most personable humans I know, so he's super friendly. And last but not least, just recently happened in the last week, Tara Riley was gracious enough to take the 3rd division and has moved from being just the town biologist to the Shellfish and Aquatic Resource Manager for the town. So she's gonna oversee that 3rd division. And that has kind of all taken place, then we all kind of filter down from there. So instead of doing more of a horizontal organization, more of a pyramid to try to streamline things and give people the resources they need to do what they're supposed to do and to know who to talk to when they need to talk to, but all of that's done now, and I think all of our full-time positions will be full once Emma physically shows up here. Griffin is physically here, so once he starts. But there's been a lot of changes, a lot of programs that have gotten added and done, but we're excited. We got a lot of big projects that are happening. We have a lot of activity at the hatchery that's happening. And I really feel like we've moved from a department that branched off and was new and growing shellfish and trash cans to actual big kids now that have big projects and big things to do and are ready to start taking those next steps into more active management for things and really trying to do some good and making big steps to move our program forward and kind of go to the next level with all this stuff. So it's exciting to do.
Jeff, just to clarify, because there's so many different types of runoff, surface water, storm water, and you mentioned groundwater. So specifically groundwater would be below the surface.
Correct.
And that's what we may see weeping from the cliffs in Pocomo or the springs down at the creeks that constantly bubble up.
Yes,
Okay.
that would all be considered groundwater flow. There's different levels of groundwater flow. Usually for that groundwater mapping, we're looking at that first level of consistent groundwater that flows. I mean, for those that don't know, there's kind of multiple aquifers beneath Nantucket, but that first groundwater flow area is where water can infiltrate in and then finally hits clay or rock or something that's that, and then starts to flow towards the area where pressure can release into a surface water body like a bay or a harbor or pond. And where it first breaks out to the surface, so where that contour comes in and goes. Because by the time you get through that layer, if you're able to saturate further down and keep moving down, it's gets to be a moot point at one point, but we really are most interested in that layer of water that primarily impacts our surface water bodies by being the first flow into there with the least amount of subsurface filtration. That's a lot of fancy geology talk for today, but that's.
Thank you.
Nerdy
Jeff.
about soils later, but most people will be bored to death.
Are you preferring to talk about harbor action plan or sediment transport and dredging during old business?
I can do it whenever you would like.
You have some or you have something to report on that, I imagine.
Sure.
All right,
I'm happy to.
all right. Up to this point, board members, any questions for what Tara has reported tonight or what Jeff has discussed with us tonight? Jeff, please continue then.
So just to touch on a few other things that are on the list here. To go through, I guess I'll try to stick kind of close to the order. Actually, I lied. I'm gonna go backwards. So the sediment transport study and dredge plan, we were able to secure our contractor who is going to be doing that work. We're gonna be using Arcadis, who also did our coastal resiliency plan and some other work on island. They were the successful bidder to that contract and able to put them under contract. We had met with them to kind of assemble what would be our internal project team with the town, and are setting up to kind of have the formal kickoff meeting for that in the next couple weeks. We're just waiting for people. A lot of folks are gone for vacation in March for school things, and obviously a school vacation coming up again to get started. So on that team, usually for stuff like this, we'll have kind of a menagerie of our crew that have different interests, whether it's harbor interests or things like beneficial reuse for coastal resiliency projects and things in there. Obviously, we'll have the harbor master's office involved for that, and whatever entanglements go with that. And then we may also end up for some of that having to bring in someone from planning, as we talked about, beneficial reuse. And then we'll bring in kind of the second kickoff meeting for this project. It's a pretty big multi-year project. Bringing in kind of the immediate stakeholder groups. So that would include, obviously, would include the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board. It would include some of the big abutters to the harbor, land ownership wise, so places like the Conservation Foundation, with all of CO2, obviously they'd be impacted. And then we may even reach out to some of the immediate kind of homeowner groups on the harbor, just to say, this is what's going on, this is what we're going to be looking to do. Kind of the second and third phase of the project, maybe looking at how we're going to prioritize dredging. And obviously there's navigational concerns that Sheila will have to provide most of the input for, but there will also be, I don't think you can do anything like that without talking to the user groups who are navigating around the harbor, where they may be having trouble or seeing or something that might not have gotten picked up. But then as we put together that dredge plan, get that all put together. The first phase of that project, the sediment transport part, is more of a benthic mapping as far as like what the bathymetry is, and then could be more of a mathematical exercise at times for how that gets modeled, for how sediment is moving. But obviously, once you develop action items for that, that's really where public involvement will have to come in. So, like I said, that's just getting going. But we had too many moving parts for a little while to get involved into a project that big without people officially assigned to that project, having people kind of transitioning in and out from where they were. So that's what that project is. I guess maybe I'll take questions on that before I jump to the next one.
Well, you've touched on my baby. So it sounds exciting that Arcadis is involved in this, simply where they're involved with coastal resilience also. I think it's very important that any dredging that's done with sediment transport included in that obviously should be teamed up with coastal resilience wherever that can possibly work together. Mr. Franzuto, I'm sure, can remember the name of the gentleman we had here when we were speaking about doing a pilot project, picking a bare bottom area.
Yeah.
For the record, that was
Steve McKenna.
okay. Thanks, Mr. Franzuto. And he had mentioned at that meeting that there had never been a permit issued for the improvement of a shellfish bed in particular, and or eelgrass beds, and he found it interesting and said if we were to work on that type of plan, that it's very possible it could be a permitted process for that purpose. And I continually think about the eelgrass restoration project that the Land Council will be into next in Fifth Bend, and looking at that aerial photo of how it's just all clear granular sand that has come off the beach. And I'm certainly hopeful that their project is successful, but I'm wondering could it be more successful if that sand were removed from there first? And it hopefully, these types of places can be identified and maybe pick a spot for a pilot project.
Absolutely. And not to interrupt, I think one of the real goals of the first phase of the project, right, is to really get a handle on where sand is moving, right? How it's flowing through the harbor and where it's accumulating and where it's eroding. And where you're getting those kind of nodal points where it's kind of a zero loss and zero gain, and seeing where that is. And I think one of the hopes from a better understanding of that is also to say, hey, this area looks good for eelgrass, but it's really prone to sediment collection. We should do something here because it's very prone to being smothered very quickly, right? And getting those pieces of knowledge, I think, are really important. And then also to take the surveys that we're doing and looking at eelgrass and shellfish, and also saying, well, if we need to dredge areas, we obviously can't disturb eelgrass habitat, or if we have to mitigate that. Is also looking and saying, we have a clear picture of what's going on. We can make really smart decisions about where we're going because we know how sand is moving. We know what water quality is. We can gather information if we're interested in the area, particularly to like light penetration and what's happening, and really get a complete view of areas before we invest resources into trying to do restoration there. Or we might be able to target an area and say, this area would be better not for eelgrass, but maybe it's better to look at oyster restoration in this area and create a reef habitat, because the bottom would support that better. And the way sediment moves and water quality is, it would be a better choice. But I think at the end of the day, we want to have all that information to make the best choice that we can. And use all of that to say, let's put all of our really good resources in these areas because we think it will be the most successful. And this is why. And we can measure it. And when we see success or we see setbacks, to be able to say, well, this is why we had success, and this is why we had a setback. We need to change how we view that parameter and can make those adjustments for the next project down the line. And I think that this will be a big step to round out that informational set that we haven't had. I mean, I think just totally anecdotally, some of the areas of Monomoy where we've seen most eelgrass loss hasn't been because of water quality, but it happens to be a collection point for a lot of sediment in some of those storms. And we've seen, you hear the stories from guys with boats there that my mooring is totally buried and I can't find it anymore because it got sanded in, or the water used to draw a lot more here and it's sand. So figuring out what that really looks like, I think will be a really interesting
The
piece of
state,
that puzzle.
the stakeholders even include like the steamship authority, or do they deal with their own channel?
No, I think when we start looking at all of the existing channels, I wish Sheila was here, but I'm glad Dave is, because he can make sure that I don't say this in a really stupid way. When we look at the channels that are there and the channels that we are knowingly using for regular boat traffic, I think the folks that are the major user of those are gonna have to be involved. I mean, obviously, we don't wanna create a dredge plan for the channel that gets from the steamship authority out to the main channel and not set it for the right depth that they're gonna need. So they're gonna have to be involved. And I know they have their own kind of maintenance program in and around their immediate wharf that's there. But to get from the wharf to the rest is something that they're gonna have to be involved in. I think especially one of the areas we hear the most that's in need is over on the Easy Street Basin side. And obviously the steamship and the Highland are both kind of in that immediate vicinity, and that there's gonna be something that takes place there, obviously they're gonna have to be pretty majorly involved. And so we're not, one, impacting their operations, and two, that we're meeting their needs as well.
And the reason I asked is just 2 or 3 weeks ago, we experienced some extremely low tides, and I was talking with the purser on the Eagle, and he mentioned that they couldn't use their self-sweep during those extreme low tides. They hit bottom, and when they were turning around in front of their dock, also kicking up a lot of sediment as they turned around. And recently, I also was speaking with young Zach Von Campen's working a sea scallop boat. It's a 101-foot sea scalloper that's been coming in and tying up in front of the marina. And it sounds like they'll be working off of our coast for quite some time. So they'll be coming in, and he said they can't come in at low tide or leave at low tide. And when they're at the dock at low tide, the boat is actually resting on the bottom. Yes, Mr. Franzuto.
Well, two things. One, the steamship and the High Line create the sediment infiltration in the Easy Street Basin. By them turning around with it, which for 100 years they never did, but with them turning around now, they re-agitate all that sediment and it goes right into Easy Street Basin. That's where that. And as far as the, I'm sympathetic to the sea scalloper who can't come in here, but the controlling depth in the channel is 15 feet. And that has worked to our advantage on numerous occasions to keep Princess Cruise Lines and Carnival Cruise Lines and people like that away. And those big mega yachts like Arapahoe that's 240 feet and draws 30 feet. So it has some advantages to not having a major depth, in the port. But as far as the siltation in Easy Street, that's created by High Line and steamship.
And they also keep their propellers turning, it seems, when they're at the dock, at least the steamship.
That's how they keep their channel.
Yeah.
That's how they keep their channel cleaned out. But yeah, you're
But
exactly
no, that
right.
makes sense.
Yeah.
It's blowing that silt right into the
Yeah.
Easy Street Basin, especially from the south. So anybody else on this portion of the report? Sediment transport and dredge plan? Thank you, Jeff.
No
Thanks.
problem. We'll definitely keep you posted on that. I'm sorry, I'm just I don't want to jump around too much, but I'm trying to get through.
However it works for you.
So for the harbor plan, and Dave is here, so he can throw it too. Again, we've had kind of and Peter too. We've had our kind of first two organizational meetings of the committee to get together. We haven't even filed our official notice to proceed with the state yet. So once we get that notice to proceed in is when we'll really start in earnest. And also kind of do the same approach with the dredge plan where we're looking at getting all of the relevant stakeholders together to start to get information to the harbor plan update committee in the best way that they want to proceed. I think trying to tackle all the topics at once is tough because it's just too much. I think Dave and Peter will both agree from the last harbor plan, really great action matrix, but it was almost too big and too much. And we're going to try to scale back and include some of the new goals to deal with things like resiliency and kind of some long-term planning things as well. And some harbor adaptation things to it. But we're really just getting started. So I will say is, I know, Sheila was initially unintentionally excluded, I think. All of the stakeholders for those goals that at least existed before will be involved. And I know she's helped us with updating some of the old matrix leading up to this, but we'll have everyone in whatever order the committee sees fit to get through, to get all of that stuff in and done. But we're really kind of full steam ahead. We've kind of confirmed the planning areas for this round that are a little bit expanded from the last one, to account for coastal flooding. But again, we're a little bit waiting to get our formal go-ahead from the state to really tear into it.
And the only thing I can share on that is at the next meeting, there was some scheduling issues, but apparently the next meeting is April 10th.
Was supposed to be this Monday, but we had a little confusion on date and time, and someone in this room, Mayor Jeff Carlson, may have posted the meeting like 4 hours too late, so. It happens. It's on me. I posted at like 3 p.m. on a Thursday for a 1 p.m. meeting on a Tuesday. We didn't meet 48 hours.
I didn't throw you under the bus.
Well, I threw myself under the bus.
Was
But
there a holiday in there as well?
no,
So,
just a weekend in there.
yeah,
And we batted around like the schedule, I feel like, for a week and a half. I got the agenda at 10 till 1 was in a meeting. So it just didn't come together, but we're gonna catch back up.
April 10th.
Not the first time it'll happen. It probably won't be the last. Hopefully for that committee. But that's where we are with that, but we're kind of full speed ahead on that project. I don't think if there are any other big projects that are going on here. I think that's it for now. If there are other questions, I reserve the right to raise my hand if I think of something.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Board members, questions or comments, specifically to Harbor Action Plan? Whereas Mr. Carlson just spoke on that. And in general, the Natural Resources Report. Any more questions or comments for Tara or Jeff? Please raise your hand or mention so now, board members. Questions or comments from the public on Natural Resources Report?
Either why we just sent Tara.
And seeing or hearing any, we'll move into old business. The Harbor Watershed insert. Do we have an update and is there discussion? Anything, Mr. Brace?
Well, I mean, Libby said, Libby said that we need select board approval to do it. And the sooner we get our design done for the insert and have that finalized and get it to her, the sooner they can schedule that. For the select board, so it's on us to come up with it. Get it done.
Thank you, Mr. Brace. Board members,
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we haven't heard back from them. We haven't heard back from Libby about what town council,
That's what town council said.
I didn't hear. I'm
The
sorry.
town council said that we need to take it, it needs to go before the select board
Okay.
to rule on it.
mm,
And.
thank you, Mr.
As far as
Brace.
the design is concerned, I think the buck sheet design, the way Dave Bossy did it is perfect for what we're trying to do. Get the word out.
Mr. Carlson, do you, in this surface water, groundwater, are there any that you're working with at your office? Are there any plans at your office for public education and outreach?
Always, we try to find stuff to connect people to those resources,
Mhm.
whether it's through social media or direct interaction or speaking to homeowners groups. We're always interested in doing that to get the word out.
And we've been discussing this for a while. We're talking about an insert into a tax bill to and creating an area. We've created a map, and we're talking about having a getting in touch with Civic League and trying to publicize an education and outreach seminar and try to get as many people as we can to attend so that they understand where they're at and where their runoff is ultimately ending up. Most likely unfiltered if it's surface water.
He reviewed the buck slip.
Yeah.
And graciously offered to pay for it, so.
Right,
We're in
right.
good shape.
Okay.
I would say in general, just as a general rule. Public outreach, you gotta take the shotgun approach a little bit sometimes out here.
Mm.
And as many different avenues you can get consistent messaging out through. Is all for the better, so.
Is Mr. Morrison gonna agree that the civic league is gonna help us? Is that why he's saying?
I'm ready to tell you my plan anytime you want to take it up. I've talked for maybe 3-4 minutes.
Yes, please.
Okay, I was approached by Peter Brace about this, and I think there is a way that we can really help you out on this. You know, we do forums, and we also have you know, a fairly well-established active outreach that we use with our membership. Just so you know, the Civic League is an umbrella organization for 25 neighborhood associations that are each of which is kind of their own autonomous entity. They have a president, you know, a board, and then they have a number of members who share in common, you know, something that's tied to the area that they're in. We got about 2,000 dues paying members. When Peter explained to me what you're trying to do, I think we can really be part of this in an active way. If you're holding a public workshop, we can certainly play it up among our neighborhood association presidents and say, this is going to be something that all of you ought to be aware of and ought to be interested in, but certain ones of you are going to be really stakeholders. We want to be actively aware of what's going on and participate. So we can kind of focus you in on the areas that we would kind of establish as being within the, I think the term, you know, the term that you use, which is the watershed, basically. And the idea of, as I understand it, the idea of kind of having a GIS map or some way you can kind of target specific properties and say, well, are you really a, you know, kind of a directly involved here and ought to be, you know, ought to be aware, or are you nowhere near this but still concerned about the quality of the water just because you live on Nantucket? So what I would propose is that you consider us to be an active part of this, starting in advance, so that we can tell our membership and our presidents of this event that's upcoming. And I would say the target might be, Peter, for we have a quarterly newsletter where Charlie Stott and I kind of pontificate quite a bit in addition to talking about what we've accomplished. And we could make it kind of the focus of our president's message for that newsletter to say, you need to be aware of this important meeting. Some of you are actively involved in it, even though you don't know it, or your stakeholders. And also, that would not only boost the attendance, but I think the most important thing is it would get them actively involved with this. So you would perhaps pick out the 20% of our member associations that really ought to be involved and ought to be the ones, you know, and are the ones that you want to influence. And then a second aspect of this is that we've had, we're now working on, for each of our neighborhoods, a statement of neighborhood quality of life priorities. This got started by one neighborhood, I think it was Sconset, that said, you know, we want the world to know what matters here, so that everybody who lives here is kind of, we're all clear on what the peer pressure is going to be from your neighborhoods, you know, and what we want in, you know, together. And I see these emerging neighborhood quality of life priority statements officially adopted as the ones that, you know, you guys can hook into for the right neighborhoods and say, you may want to consider dealing with the problem we've all faced over the years, which is we need to envision a kind of a cultural change about people who, you know, use fertilizer because it looks nice, and they happen to be in the harbor shed. So all of this is to say, there's an active role we can play. We are poverty stricken in terms of budget, but we're happy to disseminate what's going on and engage or encourage our neighborhood associations to attend and get involved and kind of hand them off to you and say, you know, they want to do the right thing. They want to establish the peer pressure that might encourage people to do the right thing. And I see a lot of possibilities here for us going forward. Just give me a, you know, kind of, I would say the next step would be for you, Peter, or whoever else is going to handle this to just, you know, remind me sometime in June as the details are formed, so we can kind of feature this in our quarterly newsletter that would probably be going out the end of June or something, or early July.
Mr. Franzuto.
Mr. Morrison, good to see you. I was wondering, have you seen a copy of what we're proposing to go into the tax bills?
No, I haven't. All I have is Peter
Well,
Grace was telling me about it, and I think, you know, just keep me posted on what you're doing, and I'll bring it to our monthly, meeting of our
All right,
committee.
we can send you a copy of what we're proposing. It's a 3.5 inch high insert that shows the watershed and the link to get on the GIS maps, and it'll have the date of our forum probably in the fall. But yeah, we'll get you a copy of that. And I certainly appreciate your help. I'm sure the board does too.
That'd be great. So I gather this is going to be not just a passive map, but it's actually a link to something where we could
Yes,
encourage them to just say, take a look at your property and see where you fit into this picture. And if a lot of you fit in, you may want to consider making this part of your statement of neighborhood quality of life. Be nice to, you know, get that on the record. And then I would say Charlie and I can target them more specifically and say, you really need to attend this forum and you need to engage directly, with this effort. And I think you'll find that the ones who are interested will engage. It may be, just a small fraction, but it'll be the ones you want to get to who are within the watershed.
well, what the link does is you can actually pull up the specific property and we can show them if they contribute or not. That's what the basis of the forum would be on a Saturday morning at the community center building, whatever. But anyway, that's kind of our idea.
Okay, great. Well, we'll certainly partner with you on this and just have someone keep me posted on what's going on, and I'll see that it gets moving, and I'll certainly be able to brief you on what's going on periodically. Happy to do so.
Peter, thank you. This couldn't be more perfect than to have the Civic League involved. And maybe on our part, we need to scrub up where this will be more widespread than I was first anticipating. We should probably have a Mattocket map as well and not leave Mattocket Harbor out of this. We do have 2 harbors, if not.
They're out there on the GIS.
And if not 3, including Pulpus Harbor, and so like the more the merrier. And maybe Peter, this could be possibly brought up at next Tuesday's NSA meeting, so that at least a little bit of a briefing, so that they can also assist with the public outreach with their mailing list as well. So
Okay, yeah, you kind of got the Shellfish Association involved through me as well. I mean, it's amazing if you just get people to focus on this. There are a lot of people who really care about this. We've seen this. The Civic League has seen this in the past when we've offered to have speakers from natural resources, and they go out and talk about what great things are going on, and then these people who are there, especially the ones who are only around seasonally, seasonal homeowners, but they're there for the summer, they get so excited about what's going on, they start to say, "Oh, can we write a check to support this?" So they just need to be activated. It's and this is the way we do it. We're in a position to activate.
And Peter and Mr. Franzuto mentioned early fall earlier. can you give us your opinion on timing for this? Would summer be better so that we have, I mean, a lot of the residences within these red lines we have drawn on the map are summer residents, and do you can you project that if it were held sometime in the summer that we could expect a larger attendance with summer residents?
I have a feeling they wouldn't attend, but I think that they would certainly want to know that there was going to be this important gathering in September and would want to be part of it. They're the ones who would say, yeah, I want to be kept in the loop on this. I might want to know what it is you'd like me to do. And my objective would be to really alert them to the opportunity to make this a part of their statement, their official adopted statement. It just kind of would get them talking about it a lot on their own. And I would say, early September obviously would be better than late September, but I think August is, everybody's so busy, it's not a good time. I would say the people who are around, after the people with school children left, the first 2 weeks of September is a good time when these people are enjoying September, and some might attend, they might attend virtually, but I don't see the attendance at the workshop as mattering so much as my being able to say, hey, here's the map, look where you are, here's what we'd like you to do and distribute on down to all your members in your neighborhood association, whatever the neighborhood might be by the water, and say, why don't you carry this forward and see if we can make some progress on whatever your objectives are, which I assume are going to have something to do with the broader issues that the Clean Water Coalition is coming up with, fertilizer. I mean, you're really, in my sense, you're targeting the people who haven't yet got the message about fertilizer enough to really want to do the right thing. That's the big hook I see.
If I
Mr.
may.
Franzino.
Yeah, reading from the email from the tax folks, it looks like we're gonna be in the July tax bill if we can get the selectmen to give us the go-ahead. So.
Which will go out in June sometime, most likely.
Right.
No, it's August 1 is
Well,
when,
that's right.
It's payable.
but it goes out on July 1.
That's right.
Yeah.
Board members, any more discussion on the harbor watershed? Mr. Anderson?
So we talked about the outfalls, and I went out and I spoke with David Gray, the director at the sewer department, and he'd be happy to come here and talk to us about the things he's found out. He's only, I think, been in charge of this. Now it's rolled to him like 3 weeks or so. So he was excited that people might be interested in understanding where outfall pipes are, what ones work, what ones don't work. He's found stuff that goes through houses, and they're not sure what that really means. And they're going to create a new plan, and they're plan on doing quite a bit of work. So, and interesting thing, when I looked at our watershed maps, and you go back, and I think I circulated some, at least one of the, I think it was a 2015 or 2005 report. It does show where those sewers are and the catch basins. To me, the catch basins are just as important as the outfalls, because that like scoops up the neighborhoods that then ends up there. So you could be on the peripheral of a watershed, but you push a little bit further out there, if you have any sewers in your, it's gonna end up in the harbor.
Did I send you that?
You
map?
did send me,
Oh, okay.
you send me a map. Again, some of the stuff is pretty extensive. We could probably run off what I have, a separate PowerPoint to show how that would, interact with the watershed.
Yeah.
So if you show the sewers, the sewer lines, catch basins and outfall pipes, I think it ties more in to how everybody really impacting stuff, from their car in their driveway to,
Yes.
kids screwing around, painting your house, power washing, a lot of issues.
Round
Window
up
boxes.
for the weeds in the
Yep.
Shell driveway, and this is, you know, where this all started really was Mr. Franzuto mentioning some catch basins as far away as the school pool area. Up into the harbor, the Silver Street parking lot on Pleasant Street goes into the harbor, you know, who would think if you're living in Woodbury Lane that your runoff goes into Lily Pond, and then Lily Pond drains into the Children's Beach area, the harbor. So if Mr. Gray, you know, obviously willing to get involved, but is able to really pinpoint the mapping and help us get that detailed properly so that we're sharing the correct information and for the best understanding for the public.
I'll reach out to him.
Well, really, and thank you, Mr. Anderson, for doing that and taking it upon yourself. I really appreciate that. And the rest of the board does as well, I'm sure. Miss Andrews, did you have something to add?
Oh, I just said window boxes. They're
Yes.
one of my pet peeves. Particularly the ones on North Wharf that are hung over the water and get the benefit of the green juice every morning.
With the Miracle Grow. Okay. Good point. I'm glad we all have our little peeves here to add together. Me. Thank you, Ginger. Anybody else on the harbor water?
Mr. Chairman? Yeah, Dave
Yes.
Bossy.
Yeah,
I really appreciate the input on the scheduling first 2 weeks of September. I'd like to suggest that by our next meeting, we all take a look at calendars and we think about an exact date to put on this, so we can really start to drive it forward. Once we have a date, we can make sure that the fairgrounds facility is available, and we can get that piece of it put to bed so we can have the buck slip inserted, and we can go ahead and plan out the project, what the demonstration will look like. So I'd really like people for the next meeting to have an idea, to pick a date in early September, if everybody agrees to that.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Board,
Dave,
Sounds good.
Saturday, the 9th or the 16th or the 23rd, I guess.
Yeah, let's think about it, and I'm inclined to be earlier in September, the better. Just for maybe even that second middle date, the 16th or whatever. But yeah, let's take a look and be ready to make a decision next time, is my thought.
thank you, Dave. Perfect. And maybe, but between that time, we could pick a date, but we don't know if it's available, so should we be instructing Mr. Brace to maybe look into the first 2 to 3 Saturdays of September and maybe try to pencil them in, and we'll have our decision in 2 weeks.
I don't know if we can, you know,
Let me know.
it might be jumping the gun when we need to get select board approval, we can pick a date.
Well, the select board approvals for the buck slip,
Right.
and not the forum.
Well, select board approval is for us to do this whole thing. They want to see the buck clip to see what we're all about.
Okay.
But that's part and parcel with them saying, let's do this. But
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Vaughn?
if I could suggest, how about if I update the buck slip with Libby's input, and we present that to the board, as this is what we're doing. The date is still open in September. It will be early September, and we're waiting for your approval so we can go confirm the date, making sure facilities are available.
Thank you, Mr. Bossy.
Can I just interject with a little suggestion, having set up all the forums for the Civic League? You can, the first thing you probably want to do is just make a reservation at 4 fairgrounds with, you call the police department, and they'll, if it's available, they'll hold it for you, unless they don't want to. And the other thing is, we have had tremendous efficiencies using NCTV to kind of handle the technical end of running a forum when you want to run it also virtually. You may want to have people, coming to the forum coming to the meeting and actually, you know, seeing what can happen with the GIS stuff, but you may also have people who want to attend virtually and see what's going on. And for not too many hundreds of dollars, you could get some real professional help running it so that you can have people attending, not by having to show up at Fort Fairgrounds, but being able to log in. At least you know what your options are.
Okay,
Can I,
And-
really quickly to that,
yes,
I would say, as you guys are an advisory board to the select board, if the select board endorsed the program, it may also fall under the existing contract that the town has with NCTV, so it may not cost Shab anything out of hand for it to go over YouTube.
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, if you got it in the contract, I mean, NCTV has been an extraordinarily valuable resource for us in the last, it has become an extraordinarily valuable resource for us in the last year, and we pay for it, and it's good value. If you get it for free, you definitely want to have that.
okay, and Mr. Morrison, you know, one of the reasons I brought up where this should be discussed at the Shellfish Association meeting, before Mr. Carlson commits himself to any more money out of pocket, he really shouldn't be committing to any of that, and I know it may have been with pun intended, but you know, as you well know, the NSA certainly loves to support programs like this, so I'm hoping the NSA, if there are some expenses that the NSA may be willing to contribute towards that.
Yeah, that's certainly a distinct possibility. We can set that up.
Sure, we can find some help.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, one last question. Do we need a motion to go ahead and submit this to the select board once I make the changes suggested by Libby? If so, I'll make that motion. I'm not sure if we do or not. If I just submit it to our secretary, can Peter forward it off?
Well, it already got forwarded to Libby, right?
Well, I'm going to do her changes and then we're going to formally submit it to the select board.
Oh, okay.
It's like
I'll
a
second
done
it.
version.
You know, just to cover ourselves,
Yeah.
shall we?
I'll second the motion.
So repeat your motion, Mr. Bossy. Mr. Bossy has made a motion to,
I will make the changes to the buck slip that were suggested by our town administrator, and then we will forward that off to the select board, formally requesting their permission to do this.
and the motion is seconded by Mr. Franzuto.
Yeah.
All in favor? Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, Mr. Bossy,
Aye.
Mr. Franzuto,
Aye.
Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Mr. Brace,
Aye.
Ms. Andrews.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you, Mr. Bossy. Any more discussion on harbor watershed insert? Vineyard wind, south coast wind. I'm just going to mention that Amy DeCibio will be speaking April 12th at 6 p.m. for anybody who is interested to hear what she has to say. This will be at Fairgrounds Restaurant. April 12th, 6 p.m. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing any, do we have anything new on green crabs?
Nothing new other than the Toscana is formally out there. It was in the Current or Inky Mirror. That in 2014, they're gonna be accepting, I guess, the commercial fishermen or people to actually compost out there. So I don't know what happens in 2023. But I'll reach out and see if I can find out what this kind of might be doing currently.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Any other discussion from the board on green crabs? Harbor Action Plan Committee, we've touched on quite a bit of it. Mr. Franzuto, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Nope, April 10th.
Okay, your next meeting is April 10th. Any other discussion from the board on the Harbor Action Plan Committee? Recommendations? The sediment transport study and dredge plan. Thank you, Mr. Carlson, for updating us on that. I've been kind of nervous about having a recommendation prepared. Now hearing that we will be included in a discussion at some point, I can relax a bit and hope to be able to you know, be involved in person. But I will certainly put some things in writing that have been on my mind. We could go on about different areas. I'm sure you will be comparing maps, surveys that have been done over the years. I've been watching what I call point 1A slowly growing out into the channel from the Horseshed area. You look at maps up to 40 years ago, it never even existed there. And I kind of wonder, where did all that sand come from? But it proves to your point that sand does move in the harbor and doesn't just settle down and stay in one place. So, but then again, there was a very wide beach at the Horseshed, and now there is no beach there at all. And the high tides seem to come right up to the trees. So things have changed and evolved over the past several decades, and I'm sure your maps will show that and help you tremendously in figuring out where areas have silted and sanded over. Board members, any discussion, sediment transport study and dredge plan? Not seeing or hearing any. We have nothing under health of the harbors tonight, though pretty much everything we speak about is health of the harbors, but we're keeping this on here. New business. Ted Lambrecht, aquaculture lease request. Discussion, we'll begin with presentation from Mr. Lambrecht.
I'm looking to get a lease to work oysters and if possible, top. And the fellow that I transferred my other portion to prior, the original agreement was that I was gonna be working with him for a couple of years, but he really doesn't need my help now. His voice it, and so I'd like to stay in the business of somewhere, you know, and that man. So that's why I'm looking, I'm researching it.
And just so the entire board knows your boat's in operation and you have gear, you still have gear of your own?
Yes, I have quite a bit here yet still, and the boat's all set up, ready to go.
Is there anything left on the bottom from
I can't
the,
tell you absolutely that there isn't, I would think. Of course, last year I had boat sank in the July, and so at that point in time, Sean took over the stuff and he knows more about it than I do, but if there is anything about, but I'm gonna get it, you know. One way or the other, it doesn't matter, you know, I'm just still looking for the lease, but I still get that stuff off the bottom if there's anything left.
all right. Mr. Franzuto?
How much of the lease got transferred to the new person?
Well, in the whole process of this thing, one of my leases expired. And so I transferred over the 1 4-acre lease and the 2 acres on the Cascada. The other 4 acres is still there, but it was in a discussion with Jeff and stuff. We've had it set that it'll probably be transferred over to Sean Fitzgibbon. And that, but I don't personally have it now because of, look, in the process, I lost that.
Oh, so you don't have a lease currently?
No.
So you were applying for a new lease or the next lease or transfer of lease?
Yeah, whatever is
Another one.
available.
So you'd like to be considered in the future, I guess is what we're saying.
Yeah, I'm looking at.
Do you have a waiting list?
Sure, so, if I may, Mr. Chair, I don't want
Yes,
to-
please, Mr. Carlson.
So Ted came in, and came in to talk to me, and that's when I immediately recommended to obviously come here, as you guys are kind of the hub of the wheel for this. And kind of looking through it and spent some time. To one, check the rules and then also go back to how the transfer situation ended up with the select board. And go through some of those minutes and kind of reviewed that the last piece of available acreage, the select board was holding to keep as part of the 10 acres allowed to the pre-existing lease with the idea that if Sean can demonstrate good stewardship and working that lease, that he would have the acreage that was originally part of the full 10-acre chunk available for him to operate that business as it was kind of once whole. So that's there. Other than that, we're really, as the town, don't have any real available acreage right now. There's some area that the town holds itself to support the hatchery operations for any grow out that needs to be done or growth studies. To do that, and then the third kind of piece that we're looking into is we still do have a few people that are still actively on the existing waiting list for the next available spot. So that's kind of where we are, and I apologize for not having that information right on hand when we first started talking about it, but I at least wanted to get everyone involved and be transparent with everybody for where we sit, so there's no confusion or guesswork on folks.
So currently, there's no acreage available.
Currently, no.
Other than the 4 acres that, and I didn't speak with Sean, I was gonna speak with him and said, if you all were willing to let me work that 4 acres for a period of time, that I would transfer it to him.
Well, I
And
think,
that's, you know, that's up to you folks.
I think that the difficulty with that, and that's why I wanted to like rewatch and look at the minutes, is the select board at the time was pretty clear that they wanted to leave that acreage to stay as part of the original 10 acres, and the 10 acres is significant because under local and state regulations, an aquaculture grower maxes out at 10 acres per individual.
Right.
So we have been doing that for growers, just as another example, like Chuck Connors has a 4, and a 2, and they kind of link together, or Mac Wraith has a 4, and 2. And I think the hopes were, as a little bit from their end, and this is again kind of reading into the meeting a little bit of the carrot in front of the horse to get everything cleaned up and operational and demonstrate good working of the leases, was to say, we'll then make your 10 acres whole again as part of that. I mean, obviously, it's at the select board's discretion. They're the awarding authority on that license. But that's what I took away from that. So I think best case scenario here where there's nothing is, I mean, we can certainly add anyone to the waiting list that's there. For people that are interested. I know we've talked internally about having a more formal process that's similar to how people are on the mooring list, where there's a regular check-in. I mean, just in the last year, some folks came off the waiting list that were no longer active or no longer resident finance, okay, and will qualify. But there are a few that are there. There's one gentleman on the waiting list that has specifically put himself on the waiting list if there were ever area in Mattakit that became available. He's not interested in the main harbor. So obviously there's a little bit of flexibility there, but there's no qualified areas in Mattakit yet. So I think right now, unfortunately, it looks like we're probably kind of stuck.
Are all of the, sorry, and through you,
Mr.
Andy,
Brace.
Mr. Carlson, are all of the leases that exist, are they all being actively worked?
The only lease that we've asked for a more formal update on their being active is the one in Cascada Pond. But other than that, all of the leases that are held are very much being worked.
Well, I'd like to add to that question, do they utilize the entire acreage? each one, I imagine some, operations appear, at least from land. I mean, Walnut Harbor is gigantic, so it's really hard to see who is who out there. But like Simon Edwards, I imagine, has a very large scale operation. I may be wrong, and Chuck seems to have quite a bit of gear as well. I'm just wondering if they fully utilize or most of them are a 4, 4, and 2. So
The only one that is not 4, 4, and 2, well, actually, there's 3 that aren't 4, 4, and 2. There's the Cascada lease, which is a separate animal. The lease that is held by Stephen Email Vendor is just in Pocomo, and they have their thing. Everyone else is 4, 4, and 2. Simon's is a little bit different, where he has acreage on Pocomo and like the same area that the vendors have theirs. He has a piece up in the deep water site on the head of the harbor, and then has one of the overwintering sites up in the head of the Cascada, but Terry may build that, but I would say in general, it appears that everyone is working a majority of their 10 acres.
Tara,
I just want to add something real quick. The 10 acres sounds like a lot of space up there, but there's 2 different types of culture going on. That's floating culture, and there's a lot of wave activity that goes on up there and a lot of swing in the line. So you need more space than was originally anticipated when people were applying for like a 4-acre lease at a time. You really just can't fit the same production on there. And like Bender is, in a shallow water lease and has bottom cages, you can pack those oysters on that lease, but it's much different once you get to the deep water.
I can actually say to help accommodate for that, the original map of that deep water area looks very different to the second iteration after the expansion, where the town actually kind of gave up some of the available area to create a little channel that runs down the middle, so that the leases on the edges, when they do that swing, we're swinging into town space and not to other leases, because we're not as regular with installations as those guys who are there full time, where we might have stuff up for portions of the season and can kind of accommodate that. But I think we've all done a little bit of learning for how much space those deep water things take from when we originally put it in and then expanded just for kind of those purposes.
and how much does the town keep reserved for itself, roughly, per acreage?
As far as I understand, a municipality is allowed to hold 25 acres, but I'm not sure what we're at right now.
We're allowed to hold 25 total, is correct. Acreage wise for the town right now that we're holding, we are closer to 8 for what we're actively holding as usable space. Like I said, we try to avoid that section in between those leases just for convenience of travel for the active growers, and then also for environmental change. But it would be area that if we wanted to put something in, we could certainly by right put something in. I think to note too, with part of it, when we say qualified area, the Division of Marine Fisheries has to come out and physically assess a site and meet certain requirements, like there can be no eelgrass at all, is one. And then the second requirement to that is a amount of shellfish per square meter. And this is gonna sound like the brattiest thing ever. Nantucket is blessed with too much good habitat to really qualify a lot of areas. So that's why we ended up with the majority of our sites over that deep water site in the head of the harbor. Because I think as we all know, that been up there, the middle of the head of the harbor is not the best habitat wise. It's kind of, I don't know, the last time I dove up there, it's like diving into like chocolate pudding. Yeah, pretty gross.
Is there any space in West Pulpus?
In West Pulpus, the one site that we were looking at there for a while didn't qualify. We had some issues with shellfish there. The other site is part of what the town has been actively using. We use it for some of our studies and some things that are there, but that's the site that we've used because we try to maximize the space given to the growers and keep our operations in areas that are easy for us to manage and not impact those two. But Tara may have more, because she's the one that also picks where those things go, so.
I mean, the reason why we utilize the Pulpus one is because our town permit, the way it's set up with water quality right now, we're not allowed to technically hold any shellfish over 25 millimeters at the dock. So for overwintering, we use that site. So we're sinking oysters and clams and shellfish. For
Mr. Lambert,
Yes, the thing about the selectmen, at the point in time that we went through the selectmen thing, they were under the assumption that I had the 10 acres. It wasn't until after the fact that you informed me that the time period of the lease had lapsed, and that's kind of played into it, but you know, that's not really critical. My question to you is, what would be the likelihood of canvassing the state to open up more area in that? Because obviously that it's a gyre, it's a huge gyre there. The bottom's like mayonnaise. You can reach your arm down this deep into it. It's just muck. But what would be the process of speaking to the state?
So to speak to the state, and Sarah can correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a while since we've gone through it, is we would have to kind of conduct an initial assessment on any area. I think we would also come back to get some level of endorsement from Shad on a site that there was interest in, because then to get the DMF to even review the site, you have to provide them that information and then a formal request from the town select board for them to come assess the site. If they review that data and think that it's worthwhile for them to assess or think it could qualify, they'll come out and do that dive and then decide on any acreage or stipulations that would be in place to involve a new area. So I think that's where we would be. I don't think we have done any of the evaluations to make that determination from our department, because we've been in kind of the set acreage for a while. But that's where we would be in the process.
And I'm thinking more something adjacent to the existing blocks that are out there is what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I think even to do that, right, because the last time they came out, we had them survey that, and that was the area that they expanded off of the original
Yeah, I
deep
recall.
water situation, is they would have to come out and still go through that same process for any expansion on that area, even knowing
Who
for what is,
Who makes that request?
the select board would make that request. to the
But
DMF.
it's gotta come through you folks, isn't it?
It would go through our office, it would also come through Shad first, and
Yeah.
then through the select board to the DMF to make that formal request. I think, but not to interrupt Dave, and I apologize, I think in doing that too, is one of the things that Shad would probably be tasked to review would also be how that request would interact with things like the existing harbor plan and the existing shellfish management plan, for whether or not those, what the goals of those plans are for acreage and expansion, and to see what that would be, for sure. There's a lot of moving parts.
But, sorry,
Mr. Franz.
No, go ahead.
All right, Mr. Brace.
but, okay, so, you know, is there room up there? What do you guys think? Is there room that we can open up enough for the people who are on the waiting list? Or, I mean, it's a process. It sounds like it's a long process.
It is,
And so it sounds like we're not going into it unless we're like, sure, there's some room there, but we haven't assessed it. So
well,
that should be out on the table now. Is there room? If there isn't, then
I think there's an interesting question to be had with that too, right? And not for nothing is one of our concerns, I know it's not a direct environmental concern, is how much area can be taken up by aquaculture before there's public pushback on that area being dominated by aquaculture. We haven't had a significant number of negative interactions between the existing growers and boaters or other recreation up there.
It's that's what I was gonna say. It's called competing uses. And you know, how many acres are you willing to, and you run into this, I just read a story 2, 3 days ago about Wellfleet. They're having this issue in Wellfleet, that the growers, you know, have taken over every public access. They've got cages stacked everywhere, and Wellfleet's a very small contained area. So you got, again, it's competing uses, you know. Yeah, you want to see these guys make a living, and we've accommodated them by qualifying that 30-some acres up there. Well, more than that, but number one, number two, you know, I want to go water skiing or I want to sail up there, but I got all this stuff in my way. And so that's the competing use. The other thing is, you know, Jeff's being tactful. I personally believe, and I may be completely wrong with the new regime at the DMF, but I think but to your point, maybe we try. This is a 3 or 4 year process. This isn't going to help him today. So, you know, this is a 3 or 4 year process to get more acreage qualified. And the public hearings and the yacht clubs and the sailing people and, you know, you have to have all that input before the selectmen, before the DMF is gonna look at a selectman request to increase the acreage. Not that we shouldn't do it, I'm just telling you, it's not a short process, it's not an easy process. I'll let her go.
Tara,
I just wanted to say that, you know, it's been a long time since we've established the aquaculture program in like 2010 and kind of formalized everything. And it is just like the regulations for shellfish due for an update 100%. And a lot of things have happened and evolved since we started that program. And I would like to see some like parameters set for, you know, producing the business plan and approvals and best management practices put in place with some checks and balances, because things have gotten out of hand. And it's, you know, there is a lot of gear on the bottom of the harbor that is still there. And we just need to have a process for how we're going to deal with situations like that.
Well, could I say something there? You know what, I think that's a perfect role for us to take on. Not that we don't have enough going on already. But I mean, I would love to look at that and update that.
To be fair,
To me, that's an important component. Because it's gonna end up like the moorings, it's gonna be a runaway freight train. And then you're gonna wanna figure out, how are we gonna reel this back in? Or how are we gonna get a handle on it? You know what I mean? The harbor plan cap the number of moorings, but you just heard the loopholes in that. So I mean, I'm asking my fellow board members, is this something you guys wanna?
no, it's a very
Okay.
good point from Tara.
I was
So,
gonna throw this to Dave's point, that I also think it's a perfect thing for your guys' representative to bring up through the harbor planning process.
Most of,
It fits right into the commercial shellfishing thing. I think it's good emphasis to get put in part of a shellfish management plan update, harbor plan update, and I think you can build real momentum for it, but I mean, we talk about gear on the bottom still, I mean, we still have a barge that's covered in rebar that sits off of Pocomo that's been there for how many years? 40, that was part of an aquaculture operation that got walked away from and just got left and sat there. It'd be unbelievable to get that out of the water too and have a plan to deal with that, or to make sure that there's a 0.0% chance that something like that could ever take place again. And I think a lot of it's there, but
Ken Kelly and Rob Yaris.
yeah. But that's,
But none of this helps Ted immediately.
well,
I'm sorry, Andy.
no, I'm sorry, Peter, you please.
When we went through that process with you, Ted, and we were with you every step of the way,
Mhm.
it sounded to me, and I assume other board members, that you and Mr. Fitzgibbon were gonna be in business together.
Well, that was the original discussion I had with
And
Sean, but
so what is he,
it had-
what's his reasoning for kicking you to the curb?
Well, I believe that he just feels that he doesn't need me in his operation, you know what I mean? And basically, he's calling the shot, so it's, you know, it's his call.
Okay,
And I respect that, certainly. You know, there's not much I can do about that. My hope was that possibly I could get a small acreage and have an ongoing operation, you know. I mean, I've got the gear, I've got the experience, got more than the experience than I want, but I've been researching it before Simon or any of those guys started up there in the new stuff. I was in 3 different countries looking through all this stuff. I don't have invested a lot of time and effort and money for them by the whole operation set up for that specifically, so. I'm not looking to go bonkers and do some kind of big time operation. I just need something to get me through the summer months and, you know, the shoulder season. So that I can stay alive. And basically it's my living, you know, kind of thing.
In lieu of what Tara just informed us of, I mean, you find out things along the way and then you realize more I's needed to be dotted and more T's needed to be crossed. And I really hate to even bring this up, but are there any stipulations in the leases now where Mr. Lambrecht could sublet from a leaseholder a portion of acreage that they may not be utilizing?
I mean, anyone can certainly work on someone's lease, right? And if grower A wanted to let someone operate on their lease, I mean, that's certainly almost impossible to track to know that that's necessarily going on, but I don't think there's anything that expressly prohibits it. But I think you'd have to talk to each one of those growers individually.
Of course.
Yeah, but they're all actively growing, they're all using their acreage, it's, and I don't.
Well,
I'm
we
not sure
we
of
don't
any that
know
would have-
that. I mean,
Yeah,
one,
we do.
I don't know of one that would have a substantial amount of acreage to be utilized by a somebody.
My suggestion in the vein of 715 is that you put your name on a waiting list.
Oh, I'll do that, yeah, sure.
And if we could get a better understanding of the how his lease was transferred to Fitzgibbons, what currently is the status of Fitzgibbons' lease? Is he using 4 acres, 8 acres? He's got 2 that he's not using. You're waiting to see how his production goes to codify the remaining acres. I'm just not clear on that.
Sure, I think if it helps, he currently holds 6 acres. He owns 4 in the deep water and holds 2 in the overwintering site, the head of the harbor Cascade.
Okay, so those were transferred to him.
Those were
under the lease.
transferred.
Okay.
And then the other 4-acre site that had originally been attached to that lease was held at the select board's recommendation on demonstration that the leases were being properly maintained and worked.
So that is hanging, so that's kind of like hanging out there like a suspended sentence. If he does good, then that goes to him.
Oh, there has to be obviously for a new license award, there has to be a hearing process that goes with that.
I'm sorry, what I meant was, it's not open for anybody. It's being held there to see if he does it so that it goes to him, if he does what he says. See what I'm saying?
Yes, I would agree.
So it's not a thing that's out there for anybody to grab. Sorry, Ted, I'm just trying to get a handle on it. And when you guys say 4, 4, and 2, isn't some of the space that they get is space where they can take their gear over winter, right?
Correct. The head of the harbor Cascade lease areas, the 2-acre sites there was originally permitted with the intent of being an overwintering site from the deep water site.
Okay.
Mr. Lambert.
And if you go back and check those select board meetings, none of that was ever discussed about the 4 acres being held for any other purpose in those meetings at all. But check it out and see.
Well, I will respectfully disagree because I specifically checked the minutes prior to this discussion to make sure that I remembered everything correctly.
But even even if you did have 4 acres. I mean, is that enough to?
Oh, yeah, for what I wanna do, that's
But
easily.
what Tara says about how, you know, you
Yeah.
gotta have the space for the gear to swing, I
Yeah,
mean.
I had originally had all my gear on 4 acres. All of it. And it was set up such that it didn't swing into anybody else's stuff at all. And I have to agree with her that if I was to do it again, I would probably spread it out a little bit more for ease of working and all that stuff, which is, I don't have any intention to go on as much gear as I ever had before. There's no intention whatsoever. You know, I understand, he's absolutely right, you know. That isn't my intent, I'm just, like I say, trying to work. And livelihood.
What, Mr. Anderson?
I guess I'm a little confused. So you were in the business, sold your lease or gave it away.
Yes,
Something happened in the relationship and now you're looking to get back in?
His lease went in violation and he lost his lease, but he was able to find a buyer who,
Okay.
someone who would work with him.
Okay, yeah.
And it was a lengthy process of taking his license away from him, which we were involved with the select. And of course, Jeff, the regulatory side, but, we're,
Mr. Lambrecht, what would you like to see from us tonight, if anything? At this point, I'm not sure. I'd like to see you go out and talk to the other leaseholders, see if there is any space available that they could possibly let you use. We haven't touched on your kelp proposal, and I've brought up kelp before. And we had a previous board member that was looking into kelp before he had to leave for health reasons. And since then, I've actually heard some negative effects that kelp can have on scallops in particular. And so I'd certainly want to see some more data, research on that. It has always sounded interesting to me. I can remember there being a lot of kelp in the harbor, and that's when there were also a lot more scallops and eelgrass in the harbor. So, but at that time, there wasn't as much codium either. So I don't know the relationship between all of these different species, but and certainly our town biologist, I'm sure, will be able to help us with that also if the discussion continues in that direction. But at this point in time, I'm not seeing anything yet for us to come forward and vote on. Unless a board member has something in mind and they want to make a motion, they're certainly welcome to. If there's anything more you'd like to add to your presentation tonight, please do so now. Because I'd like to kind of wrap things up.
yeah, I'm sure it's like, before I ever even got close to doing kelp, I would definitely have to go to Tara and find out what her thoughts were on it, and if and or but it's worth trying. I don't know the relationship between kelp and scallops because of the way it's raised, it should affect the bottom.
Breaks away.
Yeah, I mean, it could be up there. I mean, if there's a problem, I haven't heard about it yet.
Yeah.
And if there is, well, you certainly would want to
Mm,
look at that, you know what I mean?
mm.
I'd have to be absolutely certain that it wasn't gonna be an issue with anything else, obviously. I'm just looking to try
It
to.
was just recent. I can't remember who I was speaking with. It may have been Tim Mooney, the
Right.
diver, and but I'm not 100% on that, but certainly some more, studying and impact related issues would need to be discussed.
If you guys are interested too, and again, apologies for interrupting. The Division of Marine Fisheries has a separate permitting process to consider growing kelp, especially as a aquacultural product. I think if you guys are interested in more information on that, we can certainly compile at least some information on what that process would look like to bring forward to you guys at a future meeting, just to know what the steps are to even qualify an area and get permits for something like kelp.
Okay. I think, I could speak for the board on this, our main concern, or what we would like to see is the existing acreage utilized and with a product or a species that is helping as the oysters do in filtering water, helping the health of the harbor was really our number one concern with all of our aquaculture, and as is your department as well. So,
I had a question.
Mr. Brace.
Do you have any indication when the selectmen are gonna say, okay, you've done it, here's your 4 acres? How long that is gonna go on?
Sean is due to give kind of a report on where he is in his process for that. So I imagine once that gets in and we review it, that will then get that information back to them because they've asked, and if they would like to take it up at that point, it's certainly their prerogative to do, and we'll obviously be working with Sean to ensure that he's still interested in taking on that extra acreage. Or if he feels like he's good where he is, but again, that's a kind of an interactive process with him at this point, and then with the select board with that in hand.
And so if he says, okay, I'm good with 6, then that puts 4 acres out there open.
It would, but then obviously we would have to go through the waiting list in the order of which people.
Right,
apply.
okay, just wanna know, and you think that the selectmen will, that this is gonna happen before the summer, before the spring is over?
With the select board, I never like to commit them to timeframes because it can be a little unpredictable. I think everyone would like to see that entire situation resolved as soon as possible and see leases being worked and in compliance and in good shape and being good stewards. And it's certainly at their discretion from there. So
Okay,
I don't obligate those sides to timeframe. They work on things. That's all the rest.
There's a lot, not to belabor this, but there's an awful lot of prep work. I mean, seeds being bought now. I mean, this is a tough time of year. You know, so I mean, unless Fitzgibbons can demonstrate success and he starts utilizing that 4 acres, that 4 acres is gonna sit until next spring.
Unless there's some type of way Mr. Lambrecht can sublet and piggyback onto another lease. It's looking like the only quick option, whereas we're already into April here, Mr. Lambrecht, so.
Basically, my goal is just to find out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Find the information.
Well, do some networking with the existing leaseholders would be my suggestion. Anything else on this subject? Mr. Lambrecht's aquaculture lease request. Not seeing or hearing any. Thank you, Mr. Lambrecht.
Thank you.
thank you for sitting for 2 hours, waiting for us to get our act together.
Interesting, you know.
We've had our act together.
Yeah, I know.
No, I mean, this has been a good meeting.
No, I didn't mean it that
I mean,
way.
it's been a little long, but I
One
mean,
of our most productive meetings in a while.
Waiting for us to get our business done is what I meant to say.
Coastal Resilience Advisory Board, do we have an update? Mr.
Not much
Bates?
one, I'd rather roll it into the next one if that's all right.
That's fine. I just wanted to then, whereas I skipped over chairman's report earlier. With Mr. Formally announce for the board, if you don't all know, Mr. Payer did submit a resignation. I'm not quite sure where we go from here. Mr. Brace probably is better versed than I am. That I do know that there won't be anything added to the ballot. The ballot has been created. It sounds like possibly it'll be up to the select board to appoint somebody to fill that seat after the election.
Somebody would have to apply.
I'm not sure if whereas Mr. Pronk did run a write-in campaign, if there is any leeway in that manner where he had run before, whether, and I don't even know if he's interested in filling out or fulfilling the obligation of the next 2 years of Mr. Payer's seat. But I did send a message out to him earlier today. I haven't heard back. But he did show interest by running that write-in campaign, but where his name was not on the ballot, and it's easier for people to mark a name that is on the ballot. Pretty much probably why he did not make it. I'm not sure. I'm not going to project in that area any further, but anyhow, is there anything more you could add about filling Mr. Payer's seat?
Yeah, I know Jim Sherlin is back from Alaska. I could hit him up and say, hey, would you be willing to put your name in? He could fill in and be our Joe Lopes until he got done.
Right.
Fishing.
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest that either Pronk or Sherlin or anybody, who, this person that you thought pulled papers, I don't know the name.
Oh, Eric Schultz, he's the son of the guy who owns
Schultz.
Nanthaket Health Club.
Dave Schultz.
I never found out from the town clerk's office whether he returned his papers or if he turned his papers in, didn't have enough signatures.
But maybe we could put something similar to what you did for the candidates,
Yeah,
that, due to whatever reasons, personal reasons, we're now short a member.
yeah,
Public, if you're interested, write a letter to the selectmen, and I mean, it would be very similar to a committee request, committee appointment request.
it'd be good to find out if.
I mean, that's what I did when Bill moved off island. So, I mean, but I'm just saying, maybe reach out to a broader base.
And you were appointed.
I was
by the
appointed
select
to
board
fill
to
Bill's
Bill's seat.
position, and then
Yes.
I ran for reelection 3 years ago or 4 years ago.
And now you're running again.
I'm
Yes.
only doing that because of the harbor plan.
We begged you.
A lot of punishment.
Remember, you said you're only gonna do 1 year, Dave. There you are.
Yeah,
You're pulled and sucked back in.
all right.
Okay.
They got hairs to jerk.
Maybe we should find out about Mr. Schultz and see where his head is at, and I could reach out to Jimmy and see if he might be.
I mean, it would be, my personal opinion, it'd be great to have Pronk back.
Or a fisherman.
Or a
It's, the
fisherman,
reason I reached out to Dan, he's inexperienced, even if he could only make one meeting a month.
I mean, I've had my go-rounds with him, but I mean, he's a sound person, and I would certainly hope that the board would support that recommendation.
I wouldn't have reached out if I wouldn't support it. How the rest of the board feels is, if we can speak about this at our next meeting as well, because I don't think anybody will be appointed between now and then, so.
Well, I think all it takes is like one, I could go to the elections, you could write Tara in, and that's it. She'd be on the board just like that.
Holy man,
She would have to accept that.
holy heck.
Public questions or comment?
You'd have to buckle up.
I would have to buckle my chin strap.
Anything, anybody would like to add to the agenda for our next meeting? Next meeting is April 18th and May 2nd. We have nothing else to discuss tonight. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Motion's made by Mr. Anderson to adjourn tonight's meeting, seconded by Mr. Franzuto. All in favor, Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Mr. Franzuto,
Aye.
Mr. Brace,
Aye.
Ms. Andrews.
Aye.
You lose, Mr. Boswell.
The chair votes aye as well. Tonight's meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.